Good morning, everyone. Myself, Shiv Kumar Sharma, Associate Professor, Mahatma Gandhi Nursing College, a constituent of body of Mahatma Gandhi University of Medical Sciences and Technology, Jaipur. As per the part of our continuing education, today we will start the topic about heart. The term heart is a English word or cardiac terminology can be traced back to the Latin term cardia. Cardiology is the study of heart, and cardiologists are the physicians who deal primarily with the heart. The heart is a vital organ. It produces 75 contractions per minute. A human heart would contract approximately 1,08,000 times in a one day, more than 39 billion times in a year, and nearly 3 billion times during a 75-year of lifespan. Each of the major pumping chamber of heart ejects approximately 70 ml blood per contraction in a resting adult. This would be equal to 5 liter 25 ml of fluid per minute and approximately 14,000 liter per day. Over 1 year, that would equal 2.6 million gallon of blood sent through roughly 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. How surprising heart is? Orientation of heart. In the embryo, the heart begins to beat at 4 weeks of age. It consists from the mesoderm. The heart is a roughly cone-shaped hollow fibromuscular organ which is 12 cm long, 8 cm wide and 6 cm in thickness in diameter. Its weight about 225 to 300 gram in female and in heavier in male about 300 gram to 350 gram. The human heart is located within the thoracic cavity, medially between the lungs in the space known as middle mediastinum. It shows the position of heart within the thoracic cavity. Within the mediastinum, the heart is separated from the other mediastinal structure by a tough membrane known as the pericardium or pericardial sac, and it sits in its own space called the pericardial cavity. The dorsal surface of the heart lies near the bodies of the vertebrae, and its anterior surface sits deep to the sternum and the costal cartilages. The great veins, the superior and inferior vena cava, and the great arteries, the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, are attached to the superior surface of the heart, which is called the base. The base of the heart is located at the level of the third costal cartilage. The inferior tip of the heart, the apex, lies just to the left of the sternum between the junction of the fourth and fifth ribs, near their articulation with the costal cartilages. The right side of the heart is deflected anteriorly and the left side is deflected posteriorly. It is important to remember the position and orientation of the heart when placing a stethoscope on the chest of a patient and listening for heart sound. It also looking at images taken from a mid-sagittal. The slight deviation of the apex to the left is reflected in a depression in the medial surface of the inferior lobe of the left lung, which is called the cardiac notch. In this diagram, you can outline the heart structure. There are two lungs. In between the two lungs, there is a potential space which is known as the mediastinum. In the mediastinum, the heart is situated. Here you can see the aorta, the pulmonary artery or pulmonary vein. Pleura you can see. Pleura, you know pleura? Pleura is the serous membrane which covering the lungs. Pericardium you can see the outer layer of the heart. Myocardium you can see which is the middle layer of the heart, and endocardium which is the inner layer of the heart. So the membrane. The heart is enclosed in the pericardial membrane, of which three layers are. First one is the pericardium, which is the outermost layer. Second one is the myocardium, which is the middle layer. And finally, innermost layer is the endocardium. The pericardium is outermost layer further consists from the two layers. The outer pericardium is consist from the fibrous tissue, that's why it is known as the fibrous pericardium, and the inner pericardium is consist from the serous membrane, which is known as the serous pericardium. The inner pericardium, which is known as serous pericardium, is further divided in two layers. The outer serous pericardium is the parietal serous pericardium, and inner serous pericardium is the visceral serous pericardium, which is also known as the epicardium. The pericardium. The fibrous pericardium is the outermost layer consisting of a loose fitting sac of strong fibers connecting tissue that extend inferiorly over the diaphragm and superiorly over the base of the large vessels that enter and leave the heart. The serous pericardium, I told you previously, the serous pericardium is a folded membrane. The fold gives it two layers, parietal pericardium and the visceral pericardium. It lining the fibrous pericardium is the parietal pericardium. On the surface of the heart muscles is the visceral pericardium. On the surface of the heart muscles is often called the epicardium. Between the parietal and visceral pericardium membrane, there is a serous fluid consisting of a simple squamous epithelium called a mesothelium, also known as pericardial fluid, which prevents friction when the heart contracts. The middle layer is the myocardium. The middle and thickest layer is the myocardium, which made up of largely in the cardiac muscle cells. It means cardiomyocytes. It is built upon a framework of collagen fiber and the blood vessels that supply the myocardium and the nerve fibers to regulate the heartbeat. It is the contraction of the myocardium that pump blood through the heart and into the major arteries. The muscles pattern is elegant and complex. As the muscles cell squirrel and spiral around the chambers of the heart, they form a figure 8 pattern, which around the atrium and around the base of the great vessels. Deeper ventricular muscles also form a figure 8 around the two ventricles and they proceed towards the apex. More superficial layers of ventricular muscles wrap around both ventricles. This complex swirling pattern allows the heart to pump blood more effectively than a simple linear pattern would be. You can see the cardiac muscles are arranged in the figure 8 in this diagram. Next one is the endocardium. The innermost layer of heart wall, the endocardium, is joined to the myocardium with a thin layer of connective tissue. The endocardium lines the chambers where the blood circulates and covers the heart valve. It is made up of simple squamous epithelium, also known as endothelium, which is continuous with the endothelial lining of the blood vessels. The endothelium may also regulate the growth pattern of cardiac muscle cells throughout the life. And the endothelin is secreted to create an environment in the surrounding tissue fluids that regulate ionic concentration and its states of contractibility. Endothelins also potent vasoconstrictor, and in a normal individual it establishes a homeostatic balance with other vasoconstrictor and vasodilators. What are the topography of the heart? What are it means? The organs which are associated with the heart. Inferiorly, central tendon of the diaphragm is located. Superiorly, aorta, superior vena cava, pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein are associated. In posterior of the heart, esophagus, trachea, descending aorta, inferior vena cava and thoracic vertebrae are located. Laterally, lungs, sternum, ribs and intercostal muscles are found. What are the surface of the heart? There are some of the surface of the heart are, first one is the anterior, which is also known as sternocostal surface. It is formed mainly by the right atrium and right ventricle, and some left portion of its left is formed by the left auricle. It is directed forward and upward. The right pulmonary and sternocostal surface are often considered as one surface. This point keep in mind. Second surface is the inferior or diaphragmatic surface. It is formed by the ventricles, mostly the left ventricle is included. It is directed backward and downward and rests upon the central tendon of the diaphragm. The heart base may not be considered as a distinct surface. Third surface is the left pulmonary surface. It is formed by the left ventricle. Here you can see what are the surface are present. What are the sulci of the heart? The heart is divided internally into four main chambers. These divisions create grooves on the external surface of the heart, which is known as sulci. There are three main sulci. First one is the coronary sulcus, which is also known as atrioventricular groove. Its circle around the heart and represents the separation of the atrium from the ventricles. It contains the right coronary artery, circumflex branch of the left coronary artery, and small cardiac veins and coronary sinuses. Number second sulcus is the anterior interventricular sulcus. It is located on the anterior surface of the heart and represents the separation of the left and right ventricle. It contains the anterior interventricular artery, also known as left anterior descending artery, and the great cardiac vein. Next sulcus is the posterior interventricular sulcus. It is located on the posterior surface of the heart and represents the separation of the left and right ventricle. This sulcus contains the posterior interventricular artery and the middle cardiac vein. In this diagram, you can see the different types of sulcus or groove which are present on the outer surface of the heart. What are the borders are present in the heart? The borders which are separating the surface of the heart are known as borders. There are four main borders of the heart. The right border, which are consist from right atrium, the inferior border, which consists from left ventricle and the right ventricle, the left border, which consists from left ventricle and some part of the left atrium also included, and finally the superior border, which are consist from right and left atrium and the great vessels. Cardiac skeleton. In this diagram, you can see some of them name like trigonum fibrosum dextrum. Next one is the trigonum fibrosum sinistrum. Next is the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. These are combinedly known as the cardiac skeleton. We will discuss about the cardiac skeleton in deeply. Trigonum fibrous dextrum. It connects the right and left atrioventricular ring. Number second is the trigonum fibrous sinistrum. It connects the left atrioventricular ring to the aortic ring. Third one is the pulmonary annulus. It connects to aortic annulus by the tendon of conus of, or also known as infundibulum. This is a dense fibrous connective tissue that anchor the outer edge of the valve flaps and keeps the valve opening from stretching. It also separates the myocardium of the atria and ventricles and prevents the contraction of the atria from reaching the ventricle except by way of the normal conduction pathway. The heart is a double or two-sided pump. The right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body and pumped it to the lungs to receive oxygen and release the carbon dioxide into the external environment. The left side of the heart receives oxygenated blood from the lungs and pump it to the body. Both pump work simultaneously, that is, both atria contract togetherly, followed by the contraction of the both ventricles. This is the gross anatomy of the heart. This is the diagram of interior of the heart, which shows what are the chambers are present into the heart. You can see the right chamber contain the right atrium and the right atrium and the right ventricle, and the left chamber contain the left atrium and the left ventricle. In that you can say the right atrium and right ventricle are separated by the right atrioventricular valve, which is also known as the tricuspid valve, whereas the left portion of the heart, it means the left atrium and left ventricle, is guarded by the another valve which is known as the left atrioventricular valve, or also known as the mitral valve. In this diagram, you can see the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. Pulmonary valve guard the flow of blood of the pulmonary artery, and aortic valve guard the flow of blood of the aorta. These are the semilunar valve. From the right ventricle, the pulmonary trunk, after exit the heart, it divides into the right and left pulmonary artery respectively. The amount of blood is taken by the right pulmonary artery is around 50% and left pulmonary artery receive the around 50% of blood. Both artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Into the lungs, the exchange of gases takes place. The deoxygenated blood exhale the CO2 from lungs to the external environment, and the oxygen which are received by the process of inhalation are mixed into the blood. Now the blood is become oxygenated. All these processes are occur into the alveoli level. The alveoli are the finest network or finest small structure which are present into the lungs. Here you can see that each lungs receive the two pulmonary vein which carry the oxygenated blood to the left atrium of the heart. It means there are total 4 pulmonary veins drain their oxygenated blood into the left atrium. During the contraction of the left atrium, the left atrioventricular valve, it means the bicuspid valve is open and the whole blood is comes into the left ventricle. Here one thing I would like to mention you, if we see the thickness of the wall of the heart, the left ventricle chamber contain the more thick wall because it need to generate or produce the more powerful contraction comparatively resting of the chambers. During the contraction of the left ventricle, the aortic valve is opened and the blood is pumped into the aorta. This is the called pulmonary circulation, or if you want to say in other words, this is the interior of the heart. So in both in exam time, if the exam paper pattern ask what is the pulmonary circulation, you have to write down up to this level, and if they ask explain the interior of the heart, in that also you have to mention all these topics. So the aorta, it is the first artery which receive the high concentration of oxygenated blood. Through the aorta, the blood is pumped all around the body parts. This circulation is known as systemic circulation, and about the systemic circulation we will discuss in our next lecture. Till that, thank you.